So a lot of people might have heard of something like Davos, where every year the world leaders, the policy makers, if you will, the think tankers, they get together every year in Davos. And so you hear like the Davos man in reference or something. And they
it's politicians, it's business leaders, all of that.
It's both, because what their policy is this public-private partnership. So it's politicians and business people getting together, public and private, getting together to set policy. So they get together every year in Davos, Switzerland at the World Economic Forum. And so it was founded by this guy, Klaus Schwab. He's a German. His father has deep ties into Nazi Germany, obviously. There's deep ties there. He studied under Henry Kissinger, and he's created this think tank bringing these people together to try to figure out a better way, a more equitable way to run the world. Watch out. Anytime you see that word equitable, you know what they're talking about. They're talking about Marxism. And so what he's done is he's just taken the same ideas. You said we haven't seen this before, but of course we have. It's the same ideas being rehashed. And so it's just Marxism all over. So they get the world leaders together, the politicians, the public, and the private, and they come together in what he's calling stakeholder capitalism. He says, no, business shouldn't focus on profit. Business should focus on the community, ESG, environmental, social, governance. We should be equitable. And so basically distorted all these things, but they want to do it through power, through control, forcing people to comply instead of educating people and showing people better ways. And so they've done it through the public-private partnership, so basically through the money. So now if you don't fall in line with what their policies are, no money for you. No investment for you, right? And if these big companies don't follow along with their policies and push these things down, they don't get the funding, and then they basically get pushed out of the.
Let's get back to what does Kissinger have to do with Klaus Schwab? That's my question.
And the whole Great Reset.
Yeah. So I think I reference quite often what Henry Kissinger said, which was maybe a warning to the world, but I think it was more of a call to arms on their side. So he said, if you control the food, you control the people. If you control the energy, you control the continent. If you control the money, you control the world.
And then, let's back up. A lot of people don't know who Kissinger was. Oh, he's still around. He's still alive.
He's still alive. Yeah, he's still alive.
Who was he?
He's pretty old. Well, he's Secretary of State, right?
For Nixon.
Yeah. So he
opened the door to China.
Opened the door to China, but also, instrumental throughout Europe as well, during that time of coming out of the World War II, kind of redrawing the world and setting peace and stuff like that. So he was very influential, and he still is today, right?
And he was teaching at, was it MIT or Yale or one of the big universities is where Klaus Schwab met him and studied under him.
That's right. So Klaus Schwab studied under him. I forget which university it was, but he studied under him, and so he's carried on these same philosophies. Yeah. And I think people say, "Oh, you're cherry picking data." Well, really, what are the attack vectors today? So food, we're running out of food. Per the UN, they say 868 million people could starve to death in the next 24 months.
Well, you look at what's happening in Sri Lanka today. There's rioting going on and all this because it's corruption. And basic corruption is what it is, but they're starving.
Yeah, they're starving.
And the Ukraine is going to starve a lot of people.
They're starving and they have no energy. So Sri Lanka has the best ESG score in the world, 98 out of 100.
Great, yay! Yeah. They passed the test.
Yeah, they had put out an article 2 years ago, said that by 2025 they were going to be one of the richest nations. They were going to be the poster child for ESG. They proclaimed that we will be the best by 2025. They said by 2025 we'll be one of the richest nations in the world based off of this sustainability.
Sri Lanka coming apart at the seams right now.
Well, no, they're completely gone. Yeah, they defaulted on their bonds. They got no money. Nobody will loan them any more money. They don't have any money to import any energy, so they have no energy.
So they went the path that the Great Reset is all about, and they're gone. That should say something.
So let me ask this, who came up with ESG? Do you know?
I'm not exactly sure who started ESG. It came out of the WEF, the WEF, we'll call it, the WEF camp, and it came out of that. It's just a way to control people.
So are you saying Kissinger, how would you classify his political core? Is it fascist?
Yeah, fascist. Those labels are difficult, right? They're fascist, sure.
Do you know where he got his education or his ideology?
I don't, but I can see like the world that he grew up in, right? So World War I, World War II, so that shaped his worldview. I don't know exactly who he studied.
But the reason I was shocked when you just said that, I'm going, because when I was a kid, he was extremely well respected.
Oh yeah.
You know, he was Nixon. He was doing all these global initiatives and all that stuff. And then to hear him associated with Klaus Schwab, who I don't know much about anyway, and then Schwab was a student of Kissinger. It makes what you and I and we teach, and so many guys like George Gammon and Kenny Mack, makes what we teach more important.
Yeah.
Because we teach freedom of and capitalism, and these guys teach fascism.
Communism.
So who is this guy Klaus Schwab, one more time, and what are they really up to?
Yeah, so founded the WEF, the World Economic Forum. So Klaus is kind of running this. He's sitting on top of the world, hobnobbing with all these people, flying their private jets over to Davos, telling us that we need to cut back on our energy, and telling us that we need to eat the bugs. This is on their website. They're talking about why we should be eating bugs or more sustainable. Nicole Kidman, there was she made a commercial, I think 2 weeks ago, of her actually eating bugs. That's what they're putting on TV now.
Okay, so food. We were talking about food. Okay, so let's talk about food. What's happening? So we talked about Sri Lanka. Yeah. What's happening in Europe?
Yeah, so let's talk about food. So the food is the first attack vector. So I was on Fox Business 2 weeks ago. They asked me about an article the UN put out, when the UN titled the article, Why It's Good to Be Hungry. Why being hungry is good. And they were saying we need people to be starving because there's all these jobs that have to be done that nobody would do unless they were starving.
Who said that?
It was an article on the UN website. And so at a time when we have almost 1 billion people that could be starving to death, shouldn't we be trying to get as much food as possible out? We would try to do everything we can. But in Holland, they've gone and shut down the farms. They're trying to take over their land, and they want to take over the farms and stop them from growing not just food, but also raising cattle. In the United States, the farmers are being paid not to plant. They're not allowed to plant on on some of their land. It's not in line with our agreement for the Paris Accord, which is the environmental thing, which is what President Trump had pulled us out of. And then Biden's very first day in office, the most important thing he had to do by executive order was put us back into the Paris Accord. So we can't grow food in the United States because of, climate change. Holland can't grow food.
Okay, what are the three things what did the kitchen service say?
So food, and then the next one is the energy.
And the next one is?
And then the money.
Right.
And the Secretary of the Energy for the United States is on TV telling people, we get it, gas prices are expensive, you can't afford to drive, but it's necessary. It's necessary for the transition. So they're saying
for the greater good.
For the greater good. I mean, Putin's saying that Americans must sacrifice and must suffer because we have to defeat Russia. It's for the greater good.
But the Achilles heel is that third one, which is the money supply.
Money. And that's the big one.
The Central Bank of the United States was founded in 1913. Guess what else was founded in 1913?
Yeah, the Federal Reserve and the IRS. And I think if we can have good, intelligent discussion, then we can turn the tide on this thing. And so I think that we need to highlight how bad and disastrous these ideas are, and then show that there are better ideas out there.